Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to pay close attention to the picture I'm about to paint you. It is Thursday morning. You manage to wrangle a seat on the bus to work. Like your fellow commuters, you reach for your phone, put your earphones in and listen to some get up and go music and scroll through your Facebook feed. You notice your friend Louise has shared a post on the human rights abuses against detainees on Manus Island and Nauru. You click like, but on reflection you think that's not enough. After all, this is a cause you are passionate about, so you click share and post it to your Facebook friends. Spreading this message makes you feel good, and you'll tell yourself this is your good deed for the day, as it will encourage others to act. Satisfied by your call to arms, you decide to continue to scroll through your Facebook. Your auntie Nicole has shared a video of the garbage patch in the Great Pacific Ocean. You watch this in horror and click sad react and say to yourself that you need to take action in your own home to protect the environment. You continue to scroll. Next up is Darren, your gym instructor. He is commenting on the lack of state-funded hospital. You click like again and shake your head at the state of the Australian political system. You notice your brother Charlie has started an argument with some random Facebook commenter about the importance of freedom of speech. Before you go to the office, you jump onto the ABC website and get your daily fix of the news. You pursue yet another piece on Donald Trump's immigration policy and skim an article on the increase in the volume of refugees across Europe, and another on North Korea's nuclear weapons. The bus is caught in traffic, so you open your Twitter account and then check out Instagram to review the top 10 Instagram activists of our generation. You consider checking out Snapchat and commenting on your firm's latest marketing campaign on LinkedIn. The bus stops. You get off, and as you walk the final steps to your office, you reflect on the sheer amount of social media you have engaged in the last 30 minutes on your bus ride to work. What was it Louise posted that you shared? And what significance did Auntie Nicole's post have to you? You can't remember now. It all just seems like noise. But you tell yourself not to worry. After all, you'll go through the same process all over again on your bus ride home. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this mindless social media scrolling and clicking is what we have come to know in today's society as activism. Tonight, I want to explore with you how this mindless and often superficial feel-good behaviour is leading to the destruction of activism and the initiative to engage in social change. I will suggest that we must begin to engage in silent reflection and use silence as a means of achieving social change. The impact of technology has meant that anybody and everybody can be an activist. The ease with which we may draft a Facebook post about an issue or like and share an article means that we are all capable of speaking out on social issues. ABC journalist Anthony Funnell describes this as quiet activism. However, I would prefer to offer a different term to what many have labelled slacktivism or clicktivism. Rather than being silent activism, I consider it to be a form of loud activism, as it provides individuals with the means to campaign on every and any issue. Neuroscientist Joseph Moran's 2013 study suggests that noise has a profound physical effect on our brains, elevating our stress hormones, whereas silence relaxes individuals. I would argue that this rise in clicktivism and the sheer volume of activism that confronts us daily creates a visual noise that seeks to clutter our headspace. So online activism, rather than leading to positive social change, leaves participants overwhelmed to the point that they no longer seek to actively engage in social justice issues. Please let me say at this point that I'm not suggesting that activism is a bad thing, but rather that technology has sought to dilute the message of activists as the internet is filled with news articles and Facebook and Twitter posts about social justice issues. My point is that technology diminishes the capacity of internet activism to affect change because the space is filled with opinions and campaigns that lead onlookers to become immune and desensitised to the injustices being presented to them. It also means that activists themselves can do so much with just a click without truly investing in the cause. Ultimately, there is a definitional distinction between activists and advocates. Indeed, with technology, we may all be an advocate for a social cause, but the distinction lies with being an advocate and transforming one's collectivism into a real campaign for social change. So what does all this mean for activism and social change? Mike White, co-founder of the 2011 Occupy Wall Street movement, a movement that attempted to respond to economic inequality, believes that modern activism will be harmful to the development of activist qualities. He states, in promoting the illusion that surfing the web can change the world, collectivism is to activism as McDonald's is to a slow-cooked meal. It may look like food, but the life-giving nutrients are long gone. Certainly, Guardian journalist Patel believes that while it's easy to click about issues on social media, it's just as easy to disengage. Indeed, a study published in 2014 in the Journal of Sociological Science found that most people who like a Facebook page for a cause don't follow through with engagement with that cause. As social commentator Kiara Regan suggests, then this is not really activism at all. Rather, it seems that the engagement with social issues through social media platforms is actually meaningless and does not fit the category of activism or lead to beneficial social change. Max Hookapa, a research student from the Institute for Governance and Policy Analysis, suggests that collectivism may not be a legitimate form of political participation, and Mike White argues that collectivism discourages calling for drastic action and that it will never breed social revolution. To think that it will is just a fallacy, one that is dawning on us. It is under this guise that I believe it is better to stay silent than engage in this type of mindless activism that actually seeks to diminish the power of true campaigns that have incorporated technology into their strategic marketing. Accordingly, in the face of social change, when we are not prepared to actively engage in a cause, we should not seek to further dilute the public sphere with mindless and feel-good collectivism behaviour. So how then do we turn this form of online activism into engagement? To combat this behaviour, lifelong activist Sarah Corbin speaks of the need to engage and empower individuals more deeply with campaigns, rather than treating campaigners as activist robots. In her own work, she utilises craft to provoke thought and change, and requires of her campaigners that they engage in this process with her. Perhaps then, instead of being campaigners for every cause, we must begin to select certain issues to focus our attention on, issues which we are truly passionate about. The power of silence in this endeavour may be extremely useful in prompting this call to social change. In his studies, neuroscientist Moran saw that when we are silent, the brain is resting, and that in this state, it can internalise and evaluate information more effectively and engage in active self-reflection. He further concluded that silence provides the brain with the freedom it needs to discover its place in its internal and external world, and to think about profound things in an imaginative way. Accordingly, it is in the capacity of silence that we as individuals may each begin to focus on a social justice issue that we are passionate about, and construct a path by which we may seek to resolve an issue or assist others. It is also through silent reflection that we may allow our imagination to create innovative ideas about how to tackle these problems. This practice of silence draws correlations with practice of mindfulness and the idea of contemplation as founded in the Judo-Catholic, Buddhist, and Muslim teaching and practice. Undeniably, some of the most successful social justice movements have employed creative activism. The ingenuity of the non-violent peace protests of Rosa Parks, who refused to vacate her seat for a white passenger, arguably sparked the civil rights movement. The singing revolution in Estonia, where thousands of Estonians gathered to sing for their freedom, ultimately ended Soviet occupation. And the modern work of land-clearing activists, who chain themselves to trees in order to prevent the destruction of the natural environment, are all examples of innovative activism. Consequently, in discovering our purpose and ascertaining our humanitarian or call to social justice, we must utilise this tool of reflection as a means of establishing how we may respond to profound issues in imaginative ways. So what does and should activism mean in the age of hyperrealism? Mike White controversially noted that huge public rallies and colourful protests no longer result in meaningful change. They're now exercises in what he terms social marketing. He states that going to a protest march is like the equivalent of going to see a show or concert. It's a way of connecting with one's friends. This, he believes, has led to activism becoming more about spreading ideas and social interaction, rather than positive, transformative social change that is inherently political. I think that what White is suggesting is that protesting has become a meaningless fad, that it is seen to be too readily engaged in without bringing about meaningful change. Madelaine Goodsir has also expressed similar discontent with the group dynamics of the Me Too movement, as she believes that the nature of group participation in the cause seeks to present those involved as powerless victims. Instead, she encourages each victim of sexual assault to take personal action. Accordingly, the time has never been more important that we as leaders step up to challenge to engage in issues that require social change. Using silence as a tool may be effective in leading to this social change. Certainly, through silent protests, activists can relieve the stress and tension between interest groups associated with many situations of social change. Silence can lead to the promotion of peace and reflection from both sides of the debate, and the invigoration of respectful dialogue between interest groups that allow for social change to be achieved without the use of violence and division between different groups within society. This idea of prompting friendship and dialogue between conflicting interest groups shares similarities to the non-violent activist movements. One of the founders of the Montgomery civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, said of the civil rights movement, "If we as Negroes succumb to the temptation of using violence in our struggle, unborn generations will be the recipients of a long and bitter night, of a long and desolate night of bitterness, and our legacy to the future will be an endless reign of meaningless chaos." He furthered that our use of passive resistance is used to achieve friendship with the men who are denying us rights, and change them through friendship. The non-violent activist movement also uses imagery to promote social change. The idea of the non-violent peace movement was that despite encountering violence in seeking justice, protesters would not respond with violence, but instead continued to peacefully protest. In the case of Montgomery, this led to images being released in the media of peaceful protesters pitted against aggressive authorities armed with fire hoses and police dogs. As former President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, wrote of these images, they depicted the shameful way in which the protesters were treated, and this sparked a conversation about segregation. In a completely different vein, in 2011, the Finnish Tourist Board ran a campaign that sought to entice people to Finland through the beauty of its natural surroundings, through the slogan, "Silence please, no talking, but action." Whilst this campaign has focused on tourism, the image nonetheless reflects the impact that silence has in emphasising factors around us. Earlier, I noted the impact that the images of the Montgomery protests had on the psyche of individuals in responding to segregation within the United States. Significantly, the use of silence in responding to social injustice has the capacity to emphasise injustice within society. Certainly, the image that was highlighted by President Kennedy is reflective of the age-old adage that a picture tells 1,000 words. Therefore, instead of using our voices to create noise, perhaps the use of silence to highlight images of injustice is a significant impetus for discussion and social change. However, I believe that with a discussion of the importance of silence in creating social change also brings to light the importance of action in standing up against social injustice. In the era of mindless activism, we must work to take a stand on issues that are important to us and actively engage with that issue. At a Women in Law breakfast that was run by our Law Student Society recently, Justice Margaret Beazley, President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, spoke of the importance of taking action when the occasion requires it. In her address on the 100-year anniversary of Women in the Law in New South Wales, Justice Beazley spoke of how in swearing-in ceremonies of female judges, it was common for a speaker introducing the new appointee to assure her and others that the appointment was based on merit. Justice Beazley noted that not once had she heard a similar term made in reference to her male appointees. Justice Beazley promptly wrote to the Law Society, stating that she would refuse to sit in on another swearing-in ceremony unless the term merit was dropped from the prepared speeches. She noted, "That was a small stand, but it is important that when the occasion requires it, we as leaders are prepared to take a stand." I firmly agree with these comments raised by Justice Beazley. whilst I have advocated for the use of silence as a tool in activist campaigns and perhaps even as a means of activism, there is no doubt that we as leaders must speak out when the occasion requires it. I do not think that such an occasion can be effectively categorised, but rather that one must rely on an intuitive feeling when they are required to make a stand. However, I do wish to caveat that as leaders, it will not always be appropriate to stand up for our own beliefs in social causes. Certainly, we are often placed in compromising positions in times of social change. It is important to remember as a leader who you represent and therefore the appropriate action that should be taken. Preceding my time on the Notre Dame Sydney Law Society, the Australian Law Students Association voted on releasing a statement as to their support on same-sex marriage. Our then president was faced with a difficult decision. How would our society vote as a representative of our association? By way of background, Notre Dame University is a Catholic law school with students from all different cultural and religious backgrounds, and the goal of the Notre Dame Sydney Law Students Society is to positively affect the lives of all law students at Notre Dame. Accordingly, the Society deems that it is not appropriate for the Law Society to take a political stand that could isolate individuals from the Society and undermine the objectives of our society. Now, here it is important to recognise how the Society chose to vote. In this instance, they did not vote in favour, as this would have been reflective of the Society's support. And they did not vote in opposition, as this would have been reflective of the Society's disagreement with the campaign. Instead, the Society abstained from the vote, which reflected that the Society was a representative of a variety of different political and religious beliefs, and as such, was not able to comment or vote on behalf of the Society's diverse constituents. To many of you, this may seem as a cop-out or a missed opportunity, but remember, this was not a conscious vote. As leaders, sometimes personal views and opinions must be put to the side and the views of our constituents or members advocated for. The importance of perceived neutrality is essential to positions of leadership, especially where the community or members are individuals from all different backgrounds and beliefs. So at times in these positions, in the face of social change, it is important to remain silent. Indeed, the importance of perceived neutrality is important for judicial leadership. Justice Hayden, former Justice of the High Court, was one such advocate of black-letter law, the idea that judges should not engage in judicial activism, but rather be seen to solely do justice according to the law. This lack of neutrality has in fact compromised judges in the courtroom, and specific mechanisms are in place for judges to recuse themselves where they are not impartial in a situation, and therefore not acting in line with their representative role of the judiciary. The repercussions of a lack of neutrality or impartiality in these circumstances can be severe. Despite delivering a judgment against allegations of his impartiality, Justice Hayden ironically was caught up in questions as to his impartiality on the Royal Commission into Trade Unions, when he accepted an invitation to speak at the Garfield-Barwick Address, which had affiliations with the Liberal Party. Although Justice Hayden found he did not meet the requirements of apprehended bias, the controversy surrounding the perceived lack of impartiality of Justice Hayden was enough to tarnish the reputation of the Commission. Accordingly, it is integral in positions of leadership where one is representing a group of diverse range of political and religious beliefs that we remain neutral and silent in the face of social change. In finality, I wish to encourage all of us to escape the noise and to begin to engage in silent reflection as to what we think is important in today's society. There are many great and noble causes to which we are all called to take action on. As leaders, we must take the time to consider how we might assist these causes. As JFK said at his 1961 inauguration, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." So I encourage us, let us to begin to think creatively about how we will engage those around us and how we should use and incorporate technology as a truly revolutionary tool and not simply as a means of effecting social change.